Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Rise and Shine. We're pivoting today from our usual lunch and learn spot as our very special guests are joining us all the way from Jakarta. My name is Audrey Lau, and I am the Adult and Senior Services Specialist with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. With me this glorious morning, still dark outside, want to point that out. We are the weekend right after daylight savings time, so this is a big thing. Our co-hosts Tiana Davis and Kyla Hannington from the Prince George's County Office of Human Rights, the county's Civil and Human Rights Education and Enforcement Agency, and our event partners for Lunch and Learn, Rise and Shine, and our many other wonderful programs. We are all thrilled to be with you and our coffees this morning as we join Jes and Cin Wibowo. I'm going to get this wrong all day, in conversation about their graphic novel Lunar Boy, right here. You may recognize their illustrative work from Weirdo, which we discussed, I believe, in November of last year, written by Tony Weaver, a November 2024 Lunch and Learn. And we will stick a link, well, I won't, but Kyla will, a link to that in the chat so you can watch that conversation later. Lunar Boy is a beautiful graphic novel about belonging, and its authors are award-winning Indonesian twin authors and artists who love making magical and bittersweet graphic novels for the middle grade readers. The two were born and raised mostly in Jakarta, traveling between the US and Indonesia often. They both graduated with a BFA and an MFA in sequential arts from Savannah College of Art and Design. Now based in Jakarta, the two enjoy eating comfort food and being perpetually culture shocked wherever they go. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for being here. To get us started, could you take a few minutes and talk to us about this book? Because we are so excited about it.
Okay, so I'm just gonna do like a basic summary, and you can hold out the book. I'll just hold the book while you talk. Okay. So Lunar Boy. It's about Indu, who is a trans boy found on the moon. He's adopted by Daria, one of the captains of the Ison, a community spaceship. So this is like a sci-fi future. When Daria gets married, they both disembark the spaceship and move to New Earth to be with their new blended family. But change is hard for Indu. He struggles with the culture shock of speaking the local Indonesian language, making friends, and connecting with his new family. On top of this, Indu feels lonelier than ever. He's got a crush on his pen pal, who might not like him back, and he hasn't been able to talk to his mom because she's gotten busier. So, in a moment of loneliness, Indu calls out to the moon, begging them to take him back. And the moon answers. They agree to take him back to space on the first day of the new year. But as that day draws nearer, Indu finds friendship in unexpected places and discovers what it really means to belong. So when the moon calls to him again, Indu must decide if he's willing to give up what he's just found. And that's Lunar Boy. That's the hook.
I feel like it's so much more than that. So I guess I'll just start out by asking, both Tiana and I were really impressed by the color in Weirdo and how it was used to kind of move us through not only people and events, but like really emotional things. So can you talk a little bit about how you use color in this book differently and maybe to effects that maybe we haven't noticed?
Ooh, yes. So what was fun about Weirdo was that Tony gave us like a guide for what color scheme was supposed to go through each chapter. Like each chapter represented something, a color represented a certain emotion, or that they represented a certain character. And that was like a guide that we had and would subtly place, or not so subtly, throughout the whole book. So that was fun because like we don't usually get that much direction. So I liked when people are considering that in their storytelling. For Lunar Boy, we had a vision when we were going into it, was that we looked at other middle grade books and we're like, I like this look, but I also want it to look a lot like the web comics that we grew up with. The thing about web comics is because they're online, that means they have access to the whole RGB rainbow color scheme, and you're seeing all those colors. And all the time when I was a kid logging in to see like a weekly update, I was blown away by color. So I was always influenced by that growing up. So as we were developing the look of Lunar Boy, we thought, a lot of graphic novels for middle grade, they often have this like local color look where they want to keep the characters vibrant. So like a character's hair will always be pure blue no matter the setting, and their clothes will always be pure pink no matter the setting. And we thought, well, if we want to take that a different direction, we wanted color scheme to actually affect the characters. Like when they're feeling sad, they will go completely pale like a ghost. The background will go completely black to reflect how they're feeling. It's not literal. So we wanted to render Lunar Boy to have like more shading, more colors affecting the characters. Like they don't have local color that's consistent throughout. They are constantly affected by lighting, and sometimes the lighting is their feelings. So it's not literal all the time. And like so that when we finally go to places like space, you really feel like you're in there because the colors are washing all over the characters. Another thing we like is we wanted this book to feel like the cartoons that kids are growing up with nowadays, and things like Steven Universe, Over the Garden Wall. All of these cartoons, they look so beautiful right now, and we wanted a book that felt like that, like you were looking at an animated movie that had all that beautiful rendering to it. So yeah, those are the influences. I really like color. We really like color.
I think it's great. It's one of my favorite parts about both books. I love the palette and how they're very different, but you can tell there's something intentional, and I really appreciate that. I'll go ahead, Kyla or Tiana. I want to question Juan.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So Lunar Boy was very validating for me. I'm someone who also will sometimes just need to be left alone. Like I don't need to talk everything to death. So can you talk about Amina and Alon? They have this inside phrase, "I'll still be here." Um, and can you talk about being that person, the person who is still there after someone sort of goes through their phase
I'll set up.
or their moment?
For our friends who haven't read Lunar Boy yet, Alon and Amina are like the teen characters of the story. They're like the older siblings, and they are like they have a relationship that is kind of brewing in the background of Indu, our main child character. Yeah, what we wanted with this book is that Indu would be our middle grade point of view character, but we would get hints of like older experiences from his perspective. So through his stepbrother, we're getting some teenage angst, but also from this mentor character that he meets at school, who is several grades above him, we meet this trans girl, Amina, and she represents a queer experience that has like she has a bit more life experience. She's been through a bit more, and she's able to help him through the things that he's struggling with because of that more information that she has through that she's experienced. So what's happening in the background as Indu is figuring out all of his life problems is that these two have a bit of tension in their relationship. We're figuring out like what's going on in their past. Have they had been a thing? What's with the tensions that they're going through right now, and how are they figuring out where even if they have more life experience as teenagers, they still are kids and they don't quite know how to figure it out and they're struggling with that. And maybe Indu is caught in the crossfire sometimes. Yeah. So when they're like saying that they have each other's back, it's like sometimes you can be there for someone without being physically there for someone. Yeah, and that was something that they were learning from each other. This was going to be one of the main themes of Lunar Boy, is this idea that we always talk about being there for someone. And sometimes we don't consider that all of these good intentions that we have when we're being there for someone can be kind of crushing and overwhelming when someone's going through a big change in their life. Sometimes someone needs to be left alone so that they can figure out their feelings. And I was going through that in my own life while I was writing Lunar Boy, and I thought it was so interesting. Like, we can hurt each other with the kindness we intend for each other. And that's just interesting because we usually think of hurting each other as doing these bad things, but sometimes we don't intend because we're trying to show that we love each other, but we hurt each other anyway. So I was trying to translate that for like a middle grade part of the story and for the slightly older teenager part of it, and a little bit of the adults, and a bit of the adult stuff too. So through Amina and Alon, what's going on with them is that while Amina was figuring out things like her sexuality and her gender identity and stuff, the first time she went through that, it was this very public and really messy process. And then when she had a chance to figure out who she was again, she's just like, I need space from everyone. And the thing is, a lot of people want to be there for you. They're like, wait, what's going on? What's this? And the one person who respected her space was just like, you can take as long as you want. I'll still be there by the time you're out the other side of this. And that's kind of their safe phrase around each other. I'll be there. You're gonna go off somewhere dark, and you don't know who you're gonna come out at the other end, but I'll still be there. You know. So that's what they represent to each other.
That's really a beautiful like relationship. I love the relationships between all of the characters in this story. I think that I guess the question I like formed, wasn't really sure how to say this, but you've dedicated this book to every kid, grown up that has felt alone, and you talk a lot about found families, which have been extremely important in my own life. And they're all over the world for you all, and for him, and for just for every character here. And I guess did you write this for yourselves? Did you write this with an intentional of like, I want a book that I would have wanted when I was this age, or where were you coming from with that?
It's definitely a mix of all that, right? Yeah, it's always a mix of all that. Something I always talk about writing for kids is, yes, you're writing for yourself, but also yourself can sometimes have outdated tastes because you're getting old. So you also got to figure out what the kids are into these days and how you connect to those things. So like, I'll be watching and being like, what are the kids into these days? And how do I identify with that? And how does that identify with the things I liked in the past? So like, what do I think is missing and could be added to? Like, if I was a kid growing up now with all of the stuff that I have currently, would I still be missing something that even I as a kid didn't have still? Like, there could be still things that are missing. Yeah, so it's a mix of all those things. And I think a lot of it also was just like a love letter to our communities from all over the world. I'm always just constantly impressed and amazed by everything our communities across the world are doing. And I'm just like, I really hope you can sense how much I care and love. Yeah, like I always want to make it so like Lunar Boy isn't just my win, it's me celebrating other people that I'm just constantly amazed by all the time.
Yeah, the range of characters is just, I don't, there was just many parts where I needed to put this book down because it was just so overwhelming with the characters and the story and just how I was feeling. And I loved, it's been a long time since I've had a graphic novel make me feel that way.
It's a crying hazard. Yeah.
I'll jump in again. I feel like Fada, sorry, I can't quite roll the R, but I feel like she's a very important character here. I don't know what the trope would be called, but she starts off initially very open and welcoming to Indu, and then we find out that she's not so tolerant. Why did you guys include that character specifically?
So, for context, Farah is like a kid that Indu meets at school, and like at first it comes off like, oh, this is someone I can be friends with because she's accepting and welcoming. And he's struggling with a language barrier, and she's the first person to come to him and be like, you can speak however you want to me, it's completely fine. She's fluent and she seems really accepting and enthusiastic to be his friend. Yeah. But yes, we wanted it so that when it came to some like adversary in Indu's like child level life that he has, that he doesn't come across like, yeah, he'll come across bullies, but we needed someone who was a different kind of bully, someone where the bullying isn't exactly clear or hard or easy to place, because it's easy to write a mean character, but how do you write a character that is well-meaning, but then it turns out that also hurt as well? Yeah, we were really inspired by, like, one of our biggest influences for Lunar Boy is the manga series Our Dreams at Dusk by Yuki Kamatani. Highly recommend. Also, a Japanese title, Shima ni Tasokara. But like, one of the big influences I had was that in one of the volumes there's this character, this trans character, he meets with one of his, like, I think college or high school friends again, and she's kind of overwhelmingly supportive. She's just like, you're doing great, I love this, why don't you do this, this, and that? And she's kind of like, she's breaking kind of like a barrier and a boundary to the point. She's just like, you should do queer talks. You should talk to my children. You should do this. And he's just like, I just want to exist and live. I don't actually want to make that big a deal of it. I can decide how I want to handle my queerness and how loud I am about it. But she's just like, no, visit this, talk to this. And I thought that was so interesting because, again, it's kind of following this theme that I was trying to explore with Lunar Boy, with like, we can hurt each other with how much we're trying to care for each other. But sometimes it's like a performative kind of allyship. Sometimes we're trying to come at it being like, I'm here for you, I'm this. But it doesn't always play out that way. So I saw that and was like, there is a type of, it's not specifically Southeast Asian, but I see this so much in Southeast Asian places because we're still developing the way we're talking about queer discourse and stuff. And there's this attitude of like, I respect you, I tolerate you, but I don't like you, like I don't agree with that. I want you to have rights. It's like, they're like, I respect you, but I don't want you to have any rights. And it's this performativeness where they're just like, I'm fine with this, but just this much. You just kind of have to be quiet about it. So we took that and we're like, we're going to turn this into a middle grade way of looking at it. Like, so I was taking all of these queer discourse that's happening in Southeast Asia, and I'm like, if this was like a kid, if I was explaining what this kind of attitude was like to a kid, I'd be like, it's this person who keeps being enthusiastic about supporting you, and then at some point they slowly chip away your boundaries, and if you start connecting with other people in your community, they start getting really upset because you're starting to get really loud about who you are, and then they're like, I was gonna help you, but not like that. Then that's something to look out for. Yeah, like, basically at some point that allyship turns into pity. And pity comes from a place of power looking down at you. It's not the empathy that's being had on equal ground. That's what we were exploring.
Okay, I'll jump in. I did warn them in advance that there can be these like pauses while we try to determine who's going to go, because we want to make space for each other, which is very nice of us, but it can be a little gappy. So also for you viewers, it's us trying to make space for each other. But I do want to talk about there is so much in this graphic novel, and so you've just kind of highlighted like all of these thoughts that went into how you were developing the characters. And so I have a lot of questions about that, or just feelings. And one of them was, Indu can stop all the pain and loneliness, right? There's a way out. And the way out, Indu can return to the moon. And that was powerful. And for me, that was a very familiar part of the story. And as I was reading it, and I was really touched by how you address that there is a way, there is a way, right? To not have to feel all the feelings. But that Indu, at the same time, there's these images, and you did it. We see two things. So the graphic novel has the story of Indu having these connections, but there's a couple page spread, and maybe somebody who's got a hard copy of the book can open it. There's like 2 pages where there's just all this light of all of these pleasant experiences and connections that Indu is having on Earth. And I didn't feel, or on New Earth, excuse me, I didn't feel that was overdone. You know how sometimes people can be a little like bludgeony when they're trying to give a message? I didn't feel like that at all. I thought it was wonderful. So can you just talk us through that, like this very gentle way that you approach that particular part of the story?
The 2-page spread. This is the spread we're talking about, right? The big spread, the big memories. One. There we go. Okay, so for readers who haven't read the book yet, there is a big, what we kept calling, this is what we were working throughout the book, the climactic spread. And basically, the entire time we were working on it, whenever we added a page, we're like, it better not interrupt the climactic spread. Because sometimes when you add a page, then it will bump things. Everything moves one page, so we're like, add another one, so it doesn't interrupt the climactic spread. So we had that planned like from the beginning. Yeah, that was one of the most vivid things we had from the initial idea of Lunar Boy, the idea of these memories that came flooding through it. You see it from like the cover and stuff. If you could just show the cover. So this is us referring to like the memories building up. And what we wanted with this book is that something I always appreciated from manga is that there's iconic imagery. Sometimes a character will make a pose and then it will be referred to throughout it, or like there will be an iconic piece of like something in a conversation and an item will symbolize that moment and then we think back to it. So during the entire time, as we're building the world of Lunar Boy, we wanted to make it so that we were designing all these little objects with the nostalgia I was having for going back home to Indonesia, because a lot of this was working back and forth between America and Indonesia. We would render all of these small things, and we were like, once we make it to the end where all these memories come flushing out of Indu's head, all of those nostalgic little things will be coming forward because you experience that with him, and then you're like, oh yeah, there's the part with the tree. Oh, there's the part with the basket that fell. Oh, here's the part where he was at school. Oh, here's the part that. And you're just having like that retrospective look back with him. Like you're realizing that throughout the book you were experiencing the memories that are coming to fruition here. And you don't even realize it until it's there. Yeah, and again, I have to keep mentioning the inspiration, Yuki Kamatani. This was inspired by both Our Dreams at Dusk. There's a big climactic scene in that too, where it's not memories, it's with this really surreal character who jumps kind of through reality and stuff, and at some point she has a climactic confrontation with our main character, and it blows up into this surreal imagery. And we also pulled inspiration from their newest manga. I'm not going to pronounce it right. It's the End of the Journey. It's a series about death. And at one point, in earlier part of the series, there was this big spread of this girl thinking back to her friend that she lost. And it is rendering all of their memories together. You get a hint that there may be something romantic between them because of the use of the flowers, blending in all the imagery. Those were our major inspirations for this climactic spread, where we wanted to make it so that Indu's positive and negative memories were blending with that of his stepbrother, and you realize that the pain they're feeling is actually really similar despite how different their lives are. And like it's supposed to like show that he has come so far that he has become human, that it's comparable to that of his human brother. So like that moment was supposed to speak for itself. Yeah, all the visual imagery that we built out throughout the book, we'd be like, oh, there's a moment where Amina and Alan, they hold hands, and we're like, oh, we should parallel that to the part where Indu and Noah sort of hold hands so that it can be paralleled at the climactic spread. So yeah, there was a lot that went into that. So I hope it landed.
I was going to say, I did notice the parallel, so great job. It worked. It was very well done. I have more, but Audrey and Tiana, do you want to jump in?
I just was really, I guess the setting of this is really fascinating to me. And I was just curious, you talk about in your biography going back and forth between the United States and Jakarta. And these spaceships look an awful lot like ships. And I was just really curious if that was a mode of transport that you enjoy, or just something that it's just coincidence.
I mean, we have traveled on ships before, not to America, because that would be really, really far, but we have traveled across some islands in Indonesia through ships. I do enjoy them, but they have a seasick kind of quality to them. The big Ison spaceship, I remember we pulled in for once from like Wally, where they had that big community spaceship, that kind of thing. For the boats on Earth, they're both just fun for me because we were pulling from Indonesian transportation and turning them into these quirky boats. That was fun for me, but also because maybe it's like a way to get around that I don't like drawing cars that much. But also I like boats.
I like boats a whole lot.
I like drawing boats. I got to go to the museum and they had all these classic, they were displaying boats. And I was just there with my phone and I was like, boats for my book. I'm not going to draw a car. I'm going to draw boats. I like boats.
I mean,
you get to add a sail on them.
It was a different, when we think of the future, like I don't always think of a water world. Like, right. And I thought that was really cool.
I love water villages. I think they're such a unique set piece. So I was like, let's use this as an opportunity to go ham. Let's go.
I wanted to ask about the Bineka Community Center. I feel like it's a really important location in Lunar Boy because that's where Indu finds community. Um, that's where Juliana is able to find community, even though she's still sort of figuring things out. Can you talk about the importance of the community center?
Okay, so the title of it, Bineka, is part of the national motto Bineka Tunggal Ika, which translates to unity in diversity, which is very ironic because, like, Indonesia is a very diverse place. It's not just one race, we have so many subcultures. And the idea behind that is like, despite all this, we come together as one country, and we always find it ironic because we're like, then why the heck are you oppressing the heck out of queer people? I thought we were part of that diversity. So it's a work in progress. Yeah, so it's a work in progress. So we thought like it would be fun to appropriate that national motto. We took the Bineka part of it. I think that's the diversity part. If the Japanese is correct, the Bineka part that would be so it's called like the diversity center, and the idea behind it was that we were looking into communities in Indonesia, and we found that there were these kind of like houses that would where a bunch of like elderly trans women would get together. And we were like, okay, so if we're trying to create a speculative sci-fi future, what would it be like for something like this to develop into the future and to continue evolving? So we were like, okay, maybe this house would expand and it would include more queer people. Maybe it'll be a resource center. It won't just be for the elderly, it'll be where everyone can look out for each other, where they can find a resource and all that kind of stuff. The mural in the center, so if you haven't read the book, when Indu goes into the center, there is this mural that's filled with like photos of, yeah, there it is. Photos of all of the community members, and like these articles and all that. This was inspired by the Queer Indonesia archive, which you can find online. It is an archive that gathers things like magazines, even comics, just anything that records Indonesian queer history. And I'm just like, again, I'm always in awe of the work other people are doing, and this is a love letter to that. The photo, just as a special trivia, it's placed in front of a wayang. This is called the wayang gunungan. It's like a mountain. It looks like a tree of life kind of situation in the book. And I was very I wanted to have a lot of restraint with including any wayang imagery. Wayang is shadow puppetry, and it's the most popular. Like when people think Indonesian culture, they think of like the dance and puppets. So we were like, I'm going to be very restrained about that. But I do have one thing to say about this. So in shadow puppetry, that gunungan puppet is used as a transition. So usually they twirl it like this. They twirl that puppet to show a transition. And what we wanted when we were putting all the pictures about it, we were trying to represent how like queer history is always continuing. It's this transition. Everything will always change. So by putting all these photos on that puppet, we were overlaying it with that. Yeah, and a lot of those photos was me recreating photos from Queer Indonesia Archive. Like the work they do is so great, and I was like, it would be great if like they kind of live on through Lunar Boy. The memories exist further into a kid's book. Like this is me translating that further through this medium. So like, all hats off to the people who work there. It's incredible. I'm just in awe of them. You're muted.
Sorry. It's morning. I just think it's really important for kids to know that they have a history, that who they are is not something that is, just something they dreamed up. Like there are people like them throughout time and space, literally. And I think it's the work that they do. We've highlighted some of the work that other communities here in Baltimore and elsewhere about the queer community trying to kind of record, because there is something about memory and families that tends to go together. But as we know, like a lot of queer families, people have to create their own families. And so it's definitely a labor of love, and but I think it's so great because it really, I think, helps kids be more grounded. The idea of like there was someone who is like me, as opposed to making them feel completely alone in space and time.
Yeah, one of the things we wanted to build on was that when we looked at a lot of middle grade queer books, we were like, a lot of these books kind of treat queerness like it is a trait someone has and they discover it and they figure it out. But rarely do we see queerness portrayed as a community, as a history, as a culture. It does not exist as just this one thing one person has as a part of who they are. It is building on top of history. It's contextual. It exists in context of history. So that's what we wanted with Lunar Boy, where even though it's a fantasy sci-fi book, it inherits our history that we have lived. All of these characters carry colonialism, the scars of all of that, bigotry and racism. They carry all of these, even though they're characters that exist in a fantasy world. So that's just something I wanted, where like I don't want queerness to exist in a vacuum. I don't want even like culture, just whether it be Asian culture. I don't want that to exist in a vacuum either. It exists in the context of community and history. Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in again. I want to know everyone's favorite characters. So I'll start. My favorite character is Amina because I feel like she's such a guide for the younger characters. Like, through her mentorship, Indu learns to stand up for himself, and then because Indu stands up for himself, Juliana is able to then stand up for herself. Um, so that's why I love Amina.
Yes, Amina's like I want to say the fan favorite, but it's more like my friend group favorite character, where everyone's just like, we can't wait for her to show up again. When is she going to show up again? Yeah, we like drawing a buff Harry Butch. Well, I can't believe we got it. We got it.
I think Amina is my favorite, but I also I love the development of so many of these characters, and
Yeah.
I feel like I developed a part of it throughout this. I learned a lot, language and but also just experience wise. There is but Amina really grounds the story for me in a lot of really important ways, having kind of this mentor in the story.
Yeah, like we wanted like, can we have at least two trans characters talk to each other? Like usually, again, in queer books, it's like it's that one solo trans character, and they were the first one to ever discover being gay. And we're like, no, other people did this. I know sometimes we're not always lucky to bump into another queer person in life, but like, can we start reflecting that in our books? Yeah, and like, what's wrong with creating stories where we can finally see that reflected? You know, because I think it helps people when they understand that they're like, oh, I can live up to that age. And that older person can be like, I can live up to this older person. It helps to see like people of different ages with these different identities and see how they navigate life differently. It also mattered a lot to me that the person Indu looks up to is a girl. Yeah. I just think that like I want more boys to have like girl role models that they're inspired by, you know?
One of the things that you did in this that I don't think we've touched on yet is also talking about blending families and like how that can be, which I think is another sort of common experience that people go through, and that there's different experiences with the blended family. And I think that this book touched on many of those. So there's like the eager, welcoming, in beautiful ways, right? Welcoming stepdad who's like, we are a family, and you're my kid, and I love you, and call me dad because we're a family. Which is like, so again, it's kind of like what you were saying about making space for people, and that the things that we do to show people that we love them sometimes can be hurtful. And so having this, it's like kind of like the dream stepdad, in the sense of like, I actually want to be a stepdad and I'm so excited to have you in my life. But then to have the Indu sort of being like, it's too much too soon, bud. And like that's, that's very realistic. And yet, it's like that's what, you don't want the stepdad who's like, oh, I guess I'll have to put up with this kid. You want the stepdad who's like, you are my child. But then as the child, you're like, I need you to back off. So I just love this. And then again, also with the siblings, like the step siblings, like there was this one who may be my favorite character is the younger girl who's just like, I'm just here and I'm ready to hang out when you want to hang out, but then also the older brother who's going through so many things on his own journey, not the least of which is grief about his mom, So I just thought, I don't really know. Did I have a question? It's a statement. And I really was interested by the many layers of this. And so maybe just talk about how you developed the family.
Yeah, so it was important for us, like, especially for our first book, we were like, we wanted, so, like, this is the most non-nuclear family of all time. Like, Daria adopts Indu, so we have an adoption. But then there's a blended family, and then she's also a single mom for a while, and then she remarries, and then we have grief going on in this family, and now we have step-siblings, and we have a blended family. Like, it was important for us, especially in the context of Indonesia. I think it's easy for people, like, at least here, a lot of people are very judgmental of non-nuclear family structures. Even if it's something just like a divorce and a remarriage, people are just like, oh, they didn't get through it right the first time. Yeah, and there's so much heat over adoption too, something that's like honestly a beautiful thing to do, to want to take care of a kid, but they're just like, oh, but you didn't birth that kid, so it's not the same. And we're like, I want a book that shows you that many types of families are okay and that they're wonderful. And even if they go through struggles, all families go through struggles. So that was like a lot of our thought process behind this. They're also like they're an interfaith family. It's more subtle because we showed it in the sense that like Crisanto, the dad's side of the family, they have not Muslim names. Yeah. So like it's a subtle hint that they're like, this isn't exactly like not everything is just like one monolith in this family. And they still love each other and care about each other. That's an okay thing, but that would be so taboo in Indonesia, and so I wrote it. Yeah. So we had a lot of that in mind. Daria, when we were developing her, we knew that there is a weight when writing a Muslim character in an American book who is the mother of another, like she raises a Muslim boy. There is so much Islamophobia tied to homophobia, and that's viewed as like, they would never be accepting. So we wrote her with this understanding that it would be a really big deal to see a hijabi woman look at her son and say, I chose to raise you and I love every single part of you. Like, that's a big deal. I don't take that lightly. I wrote that with all of the weights that I knew that it carried. I wanted to make sure that people in America could see that, like, you're not seeing the whole picture when you're Islamophobic to other people. Yeah. And like, for the record, even within our country, there are accepting families there too. Just gotta look out for them. Faith and queerness are very heavily tied here. They're part of the big discussion because it's such a spiritual place. So that was what came with developing her. The rest of the family, we wanted to have a language barrier within the family. And I know a lot of people are thinking, well, but they're raised in the same family. How can they have a language barrier within each other? And I'm like, then you haven't lived how I have. Because I mostly, like, I could speak Bahasa and English very fluently when I was a kid. And then I went to America and I struggled with English, so I had to take extra English classes. But then I got really good at English and I flew back to Indonesia. And they were like, your Bahasa Indonesia is very intermediate, now you have to take extra classes for that, and I've been kind of stuck ever since. And because, like, I'm traveling a lot, I'm usually stuck with English because it's the most helpful language for me. But meanwhile, my siblings, they're so much more fluent at Bahasa Indonesia than me. They're even picking up more slang than I ever could. So within a family, you can have a language barrier, and we wanted to explore that.
Like a generational family.
Like, there's a gap, and like, sometimes, like, we weren't able to explore it, but like sometimes a generational reason could be like maybe the school the school makes it so that they don't teach English.
Like, it's mandatory in this section and it isn't mandatory.
Yeah, like in my generation, I don't think Bahasa Indonesia was as mandatory as it now is for my younger siblings, and that's part of the reason why they're more fluent than me. Yeah, so like that was how we were showing it. Like, Crisanto worked in those spaceships before, so he was in like this English. He was informed by, like, he was meeting a bunch of communities, more cross-cultural. But then when he had kids and he moved to Earth, they were a lot more here. And then like the older brother, he has more access to English, but the younger sister isn't, and that creates a barrier when Indu comes in and he doesn't know how to speak to that. So we were designing these families with all of these intentions in mind.
It's incredible, and I love the part like the phone translation. You know, like it's like that. This is just so. I mean, it was amazing. I do want to talk about something. Well, actually, I have okay. We got to meet your mom backstage. So first of all, we were very lucky. All of the viewers are jealous right now that we got to meet your mom.
You guys will never meet my mom.
So I'm wondering, like, what is your like? How is it for your family? Like, you're having this like international success. There's this international universality to your work. Like, what is your family thinking?
They're confused and supportive.
Okay.
Like that's probably the best I can ask for with my parents. They don't 100% understand how comics work, but they support me anyway, and that's the best kind of support I can ask from an Asian family, because I know like my other Asian author friends are like, our parents want us to be doctors and lawyers, and I'm just like, oh, mine supported me 100%. They were just like, as long as you're happy, even though I don't know what that is, then like, yeah. But I'm like, at least I'm glad I can have a book and it's doing successfully, so they can understand a good bit. And when we go to bookstores now and they see my book on the shelf, I can point to it and be like, look, I'm an author. Do you get it? That's my job. Do you get it? I made that. Yeah. So like, there's a bit of they don't totally understand. Yeah, there's a barrier of a generational barrier.
Well, that's pretty. Yeah, I was just thinking, your mom joins in. Here you are. It's 7:42 a.m. Eastern time in the United States, and like there you are, and your mom's there. I was just thinking, like, what, that's got to just be amazing, And so I love to hear that your family is supportive if they don't totally get all of it.
Yeah.
Adriana, do you want to?
I know we have young people that watch this and may watch this later. So if you could just talk a little bit about how you came about doing what you do. So, because you mentioned like people don't always look at graphic novels as books. There's not always the same amount of respect. And I think there's a lot of kids who are like, I like to draw, but like they don't really know how to like translate that into something like what you're doing. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and maybe your school.
Yeah, sure. Well, for one, graphic novels are art, definitely, and they are books, definitely. Like there is such a specific kind of closeness you have with a graphic novel because you get to see my hand. You get to see everything that I've drawn. That's my mark making that you get to see. I remember when Lunar Boy was announced and a bunch of like the Indonesian readership who weren't used to seeing an Indonesian book, they were like, wait, there's an Indonesian book? And then they saw that the announcement said it was a graphic novel and they're like, there's gonna be pictures? We're gonna see Indonesia? Wait, we get to see it? Yeah, that makes it so special. I'm not just describing it to you, I get to draw it, I'm in control. What was it? Visual media literacy is a part of that. Visual literacy. It's how I express myself. How did we get into this? That's the question. Growing up, I always was interested in like visual storytelling medium. I was very intimidated by comics because for the most part I associated comics with superhero comics, and I got bullied a lot whenever I was into a boyish thing. So that's clearly changed now. But growing up, I was very scared of picking up a superhero comic. But what was accessible to me was webcomics. So I grew up with a lot of Kate Beaton, Hark of Vagrant. I grew up with Everblue by Mike Sexton.
We read Nimona while it was updated.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. I grew up with webcomics because they were directly available to me. And I was so fascinated by all of it that especially the gag comics I really liked. I would go to school and I would doodle in my book. I would try to make little jokes, and I realized that because I was so influenced by these gag webcomics, I was learning comedic pacing through paneling. So a funny thing we did is because we're separated in classes, we would try to make each other laugh by break time, by drawing a comic. And then we meet each other at break time and we're like, look, I drew a comic, I drew this. And we try to make each other laugh. And sometimes we gave each other critique to how to make the joke. We're funnier. Like, oh, add an extra break panel and then the joke will land. And I didn't realize that I was slowly developing these comic things. And by the time
critiquing each other.
Yeah, we were critiquing each other. We were already doing that. So by the time we were like, oh, I want to go to art school. First I thought, I like watching animated movies. Maybe I'll go into animation.
Wrong.
And then I took one sequential art class, and I was like, no, I like comics. That makes way more sense. So we went into comics because everything just clicked, and it made sense because I was drawing from copying webcomics. I was learning comedic timing and pacing and paneling. So being able to learn with a more like formal structure of learning and people who actually knew how things like lettering worked, suddenly that was so exciting for me. So if you're growing up and you want to figure out comics as a medium, I would definitely be like, understand the language of comics. That can mean the paneling, which is a very underrated part. Like, why did the author choose to like long vertical panels versus long horizontal ones? Why did they choose to break up the paces? Why is there sometimes a silent panel? If you took that away, would it be less effective? I was always asking myself these questions whenever I read comics, and that was what made me like fall in love with the medium. Things like lettering and all this. Was it lettering, colors, character acting, the way everything is paced? I really like the medium.
If you don't have a twin to talk to who you can obsess over the weirdest things about, I suggest finding weird friends to complain about.
Other comic nerds. Maybe like give them a Dogman book as a starter, and then soon you'll all be a part of it, and then you realize you're knee deep in like Monster by Naoki Urasawa or something. Speaking of which, broaden your scope. I think people like to be snobs and only read manga or only read superheroes or only read webcomics. You will understand the medium better if you understand how people from different cultures approach it. It's like being the avatar. You need to know all the elements so that you're a more fuller understanding in your craft. Except instead of martial arts, it's being an artist.
I think you could do both.
Yeah.
But I guess one of the things that I really appreciated about this book, there was a moment, I'm such an introvert, and when I was a kid, I was deathly afraid of people. And Indu has this moment where it's like, it's my last moments on New Earth. Like, if I'm going to be leaving, like, maybe I could try to be different. And that was something that took me a very long time to learn. That it wasn't just how people, like me going into a situation and feeling awkward, but it was also like what I was doing. And I felt like that was so mature, but it's so important. And I wish someone had written that in a book for me when I was, 12, 13 years old, because it would have made such a difference. I had to go to England and like be outside of myself and force myself like basically onto people, which I wasn't used to because I didn't know anyone. It was a brand new experience, but it was like eye-opening. It was like, I have control of this process too. Like, it's not just things coming at me, but what I'm doing. And I feel like that's such a pivotal part of this book.
Yeah, as a fellow introvert, well, both of us are. We're deeply introverted people. That's why we stick together so much. We're evil together. But like, it's amazing how even sometimes as late in your life as like your late 20s or something, this is still a lesson we still have to learn, where we're just like, wait, if I want to make friends, I can just try.
I could just change my mindset in the way I approach it.
Like, maybe I can look to another environment to find more people like me. Wait, I had to learn that again.
Yeah,
because you get so used to routines.
Yeah, it's like a part of Indu's loneliness is like, some of that is the real world, but some of that is the way he closes himself off. Like, he was so like focused on like, I'm gonna bond with the big brother I've always wanted, and he kind of forgot that like there's a sister here waiting for him. She has a language barrier, but you two can get through it. And he realizes like, wait, that was a mindset thing. She was always there. Maybe if I just applied that to like friends at school and stuff, I could meet more people. Like, sometimes the loneliness is the prison we've made in our own minds,
and then we didn't realize the option was there.
We could step out of it sometimes.
I love the way the sister just like comes back. It just is back bodily into the room with, here's dinner, let's talk, and
let's talk
and
comics.
Yes.
It's how it starts.
Yeah.
It's so great.
And how lonely she must have been up until that point, right? Because Alon is having his moment. He's going through it at the time, and she has this new brother who's very close in age to her, and he can't communicate with her, and she can't communicate with him, and she really just wants to. I thought she was very sweet.
Yeah, like she's making all the moves, she's trying. And Indu's just like, brother.
Brother only. I need brother. I need a role model to look up towards. And like there are moments for last three where like she connects with Daria when Indu decides to back off and give her space to be able to give that connection. But there are also times like it's kind of like hidden in Bahasa Indonesian in the dialogue. But she and Alana are kind of sassy to each other, where like she actually asks him like, "Hey, can you cook us dinner again? I like how you cook," and he's just like, "Finish your homework. Finish your homework first, nerd." And it's in Bahasa, so you don't know. You don't know that's happening, kind of. So they're kind of sassy to each other. But like, yeah, she's got her whole thing going on. That's another thing. Like, I really appreciate in manga is that it's not just about the main character. Sometimes your main character is a witness to the bigger caste system. We wanted there to be a moment where Indu's just quiet and he's just eavesdropping, and you realize that like the girls in his family are dealing with the grief because someone they know is no longer in their lives, and he's just there. He's observing, and that informs him.
And last three.
Well, and there's a food element too. They're definitely I love the way food is used in this book. If you could talk a little bit about that, and what are they eating? I have no frame of reference for this. The favorite food.
All my favorite foods in a book. So we wanted to render the food in glorious like Ghibli-esque detail because like we wanted that kind of love to be shown in the book.
Yeah, and it's also part of like there's a nostalgia to this book. Everything like we wanted all of these small details. Part of I keep talking about drawing Lunar Boy is like it's not just any other middle grade book. It's an Indonesian middle grade book. I draw classrooms all the time in middle grade, but this time I'm drawing an Indonesian classroom, and those are structured differently. The tables are connected. The boards look exactly like this. Like there's a style to how the classes are structured. And with that, every other detail, I'm making sure I'm like lovingly rendering that. And that includes the food. The food isn't just like, it's there, it's part of the culture shock that Indu's going through. He mentions that, like, I'm not used to my dad's cooking. And part of the way his dad connects to him is that he makes him a meal the way that the way that Indu's mom would make him a meal. He changes the recipe to be exactly how Indu would have it. And that's how they connect through food. Food exists, and it has that detail that like when you're all the way back to the end with that climactic spread, it hits you because it's part of the detail of this world. The environment is alive, and that includes the food these characters eat.
There's a lot of soups. There's a lot of
soto ayam is the one that's mentioned by name, chicken soup. that's what it is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of seafood too. Ikan bakar, my beloved. It's baked fish.
It's baked fish. There's sometimes fried fish. There's baked fish. I like the baked fish. Nobody does seafood quite like Southeast Asia because we're right there along the equator.
Just right there next to that ocean, eating it all up. And like there's nasi goreng,
which is fried rice. Nasi tumpeng, was that in there? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a celebratory yellow rice, which is shaped like a pyramid, so that it looks like a pile of gold.
It's delicious. Celebration and festive.
I no longer want a birthday cake. I just want yellow rice to celebrate another year around the sun.
I love that. It's great. And we have someone who works at is it a food truck too? And
I guess it is a food truck. It's an Indonesian food truck.
Oh my gosh. It's like a food cart?
Yes. It's a food cart, a gerobak.
Yeah, it's called a gerobak. One guy is in charge
of
it.
It's a food vendor, basically. And basically it's food on the cheap, but because of that, sometimes the recipes are really specific, so you end up going to them. Sometimes these gerobaks are so successful, they kind of expand to little restaurants.
Wait, I don't have a model one. Hold on.
You okay?
I'm gonna get it.
Oh, you do? Oh my gosh. So, this was our reference. Excuse me. So this was our little reference. This
Oh.
cheap little toy. It's not accurate to how they really look, but it was the structure I needed to take pictures for the graphic novel. I love these. If someone ever made like an accurate replica of what they look in real life, I'd buy it all. Yeah, it's basically like a staple of Indonesian culture and community to eat around a gerobak. And I was thinking like, it would be so cool if Alon just cooked that one. Yeah, and there was like a little romantic story with the teenagers and showing up for food and being like, it wasn't always about the food. Sometimes it's about the cute boy. It was kind of an agenda to have like the men in the comic be cooks in the story.
Yeah, we definitely need more men cooks.
Yes.
I actually love the bonding moment between the dad and Indu, where Indu is very sick and the dad makes his favorite meal, just like how his mom makes it. And he sort of uses that moment to apologize for earlier misgendering Indu. Um, yeah, that was just another. And then we see an image. I can't find the camera there of how it was before. The families became blended with the dad cooking, and that's sort of where you can see Alone, like sort of getting his love for the food and cooking.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't have a
Getting
question there.
into
I
the
just
So the part with like the dad apologizing, that was a really big moment. It was very important for us because there's always this conversation of like adults apologizing to children. Sometimes you got to be humble. You messed up by your kid, uh, and you need to own up to that. But also, we wanted it because again, I'm always responding to like what are queer stories currently like, and what can we do different, or what am I not seeing. And one of the things I wasn't seeing is that a lot of times our queer kid protagonists, when they're dealing with an issue, they're kind of left on their own to deal with it because they're the only queer character and no one else gets them. So we wanted in this situation when there was a misgendering, one, we made it so that Indu reacts in fear and he freaks out and he just doesn't want to talk about it. I feel like a lot of people think that trans people are like, how dare you misgender me? When in reality, it's often really awkward and they just want to retreat into themselves. So we wanted it to be that like there isn't a moment where Indu teaches his dad that misgendering is not good. We wanted it to be that like his mom is there in the situation. The parents talked it out to each other, and then they took responsibility and apologized to the kid, and they met the kid where he's at. That was really important for us. Yeah. Because oftentimes, like, we have these stories where these kids are left into their own devices that we're not making stories that are like, hey, parents, this is what you should do. You should show up for your kid. You should back them up. Even if another family member screws up, don't just leave it to the kid to call it out.
And it's a moment where you in the audience realize how important it is to another person to see them as they are and to respect them and to love them as they are. And I think it's a really beautiful moment. I just love the way that the dad has tattoos. Like I just, it's like, hey, I have a tattoo for all my kids and I want to get one for you. And there is this moment and you know that he's well-meaning, but there's also this other side of not realizing.
Yeah, the way we casually hurt each other without realizing it,
Right.
even in a moment of support. Even yeah, I was very glad I got away with drawing the tattoos on his bare back. That was fun.
So having children with tattoos is a typical thing, or that was
definitely not anymore. It's like it's a culture that's like slowly being unmodernized, like demodernized out and stuff. Tattoos are pretty like out they're like it's part of like how we reclaim culture. Sometimes people are like it's part of colonialism to be like tattoos bad. So having young characters reclaim that was important. But yeah, it's not as normal as it used to be. Yeah. Or it's usually hidden under layers of clothing so we can't tell. For respectable society.
I guess it's my turn to be the bad guy, Kyla. See, so I have to be the one who say, unfortunately, we are out of time. Jes and Cin, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Indonesia. Thank you for making our morning spectacular, and I hope the mornings of all those who are with us today. For those of you watching, whether you're joining us live or later on demand, thank you for choosing to spend your time with us. You are why we do what we do. The very best way that you can support Jes and Cin is by buying their book. You can also check it out from the library as soon as I return my copy. You can get Lunar Boy from your favorite independent bookstore or your local library system. It's a beautiful book, folks. And if you couldn't tell from the way we've responded, I'm going to be giving this, I'm sorry, nieces and nephews, but no surprises here for Christmas. But beautifully drawn, beautifully told. And we think it resonates with anyone who has ever felt alone or out of step with everyone around them. We have many more events coming up that we hope that you can join us, including next week when Lunch and Learn comes back to its regular time with extraordinary artist Pierre Sylvain in conversation about social justice and arts. And that evening, our Solidarity Story discussion continues at Mixed Food Hall in Mount Rainier as we talk about Heather McGee's The Sum of Us. Please check out pgcmls.info/events to see what the library has coming up this week. The Office of Human Rights, and we have like 3 events this week. So you're with us quite a bit this week. Visit the Office of Human Rights at civilrights.mypgc.us to see all the work that they're doing to help elevate social justice in the county. Again, Cin and Jes, thank you so much for being here today. We love your work. We're so glad we got to talk to you. Best wishes, everyone, and I hope you have a lovely day. Bye.